Hello and welcome to Cloud Experts Unleashed. We have another great VMware Tip broadcast for you today, and I'm joined by our solutions architect here from xByte Technologies, Mr. Josh Moss. Welcome, Josh.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, today we are going to be talking about HCIBench, or it's the Hyper-converged Infrastructure Benchmark. It's a great tool to kind of get that benchmark of a new deployment to test against in the future in case anyone's kind of complaining about against performance. So Josh, I want to give a little summary here about how you see people using this tool.
Yeah, absolutely. So after a new vSAN cluster is set up, it's really a great tool to run against, a greenfield deployment where you haven't placed any workloads on it yet, just to understand, what the maximum performance you can expect out of the cluster. So that way you have those performance metrics in the future.
Great. Now, I know we talk to customers a lot about live optics as a great tool to have to kind of run against to check your performance. How does HCIBench compare to live optics?
Yeah, so live optics is good to run whenever you're looking at refreshing some infrastructure. You just see how well your own workloads are running. Whereas HCIBench, its sole intent and purpose is to stress the environment and see just how fast it is for you.
Okay, so the HCIBench is like really no existing workloads, where live optics you're actually looking at the existing workloads.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, well, without further ado, I'll let you kind of walk through the tool itself and give people kind of a preview of what they can expect and how to configure it and how to get the most out of it.
Perfect. All right. Here we've got a screenshot of the GitHub page for the HCIBench appliance itself. It just kind of gives a little overview as to what the tool is. As we mentioned, it's meant to stress the environment. See how many IOPS you can get, see how much throughput you can get, depending on a variety of parameters that are all user configurable. As many of you or most of you are probably familiar with, it comes in a form of an OVF package. So in order to deploy it, you simply just have to download the OVF package from that GitHub page. And then, through your typical setup process in vCenter, you just choose your cluster and deploy OVF template. Skip through a lot of the fields here, but if you've deployed one OVF template, you've deployed pretty much any OVF template. A couple things that I want to call out here is the template itself. It does have two network adapters. One of the network adapters is what the HCIBench VM uses to communicate with vCenter and the vSAN servers. And then the second one that you see there is called VM Network. That's another user-defined network that you need to pick. That is purely for communication between the HCIBench virtual machine and the worker VMs that it creates to actually generate the I/O tests. As you can see there, I set a static IP on the management network. You can let it get DHCP. You can also do the same thing for the VM network. And there's one call out that I will make about DHCP and whether it's present in the environment or not here in the next couple slides. Finally, after you click submit, just keep an eye on the vCenter task and make sure that the deploy OVF template task itself completes. Next, you'll want to enter the IP that you either assigned or that it got from DHCP on the management network using HTTPS and port 8443. Also, the username by default is root, and the credentials will be whatever you chose during the OVF deployment. Next, this is kind of the landing page for HCIBench. You see across the top, there's configuration log results. We're by default at the configuration page. And effectively, what you need to set here is either the IP or fully qualified domain name of your vCenter, the data center name, optional VM folder. You have to tell it the data store that's going to be test unless it was changed. The default is called vSAN data store. You give it username, password, cluster name, network name here is the VM network that you use to match on the OVF deployment. And then the other thing that I wanted to call out was the don't have DHCP. If you don't, you can toggle that little box, and then it'll allow you to input, a range of IP addresses that you can use. There's some other settings down here that we'll get to here shortly. After you input all that information, the first thing that you'll want to do at the bottom is hit Save Config, so that it saves your input, and then Validate Config. What happens whenever you hit the Validate Config is it's going to test the IP or DNS. It's going to test your credentials. It's going to make sure that your cluster, the data store, and all that good stuff exists, and that it can also connect to each of the vSAN nodes and the vCenter server itself. If there are any warnings or errors, if it fails for any reason, here in this pane that pops up, it will tell you, what exactly is wrong. I want to go back to the configuration portion because there's a couple different ways that you can tell HCIBench to actually perform I/O tests. Right here, we have the Easy Run option, the toggle selected. So what it's going to do is it's going to dynamically choose the amount of VMs, the resources they have, and the number of VMs that it actually creates as the workers, depending on the amount of nodes. There's 4 default workload profiles there. You see various block size, 4K, 8K, and 256K, and
Josh,
a variance of.
Can you zoom in a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so those are the default workload profiles. Various block sizes, various percentages of read versus write percentage, random versus sequential. This is just kind of as the name implies, easy run. You just select it and it'll do those workload profiles. But as we'll see in the next page, or the next slide rather, you can get really granular and specific with how you want to test. Here we've got similar thing, but what we've done is we've deselected the easy run, and we can see here you can choose a prefix for the name of the worker VMs. You can choose a number of VMs, how many disks it's going to test, number of CPUs, size of disk, RAM, all that good stuff. You can also choose some various settings down here. You can name it. You can have them zero out the disk before the test run. But right here is what I really want to call out. In this dropdown, you will see the default I/O workload profiles that we saw in the previous slide. However, if you hit Add, you can actually get this neat little wizard to generate, a fully custom I/O workload profile. Similar here, you can choose disks. You can working set percentage, how many threads. You can choose the block size you want, read, write, random percentage, anything like that. The compression, I/O rate, you can set IOPS limits. You can get really granular with it. And one thing here that I've had people ask is, okay, that's great, I can do that, but how do I know, what my workload, my actual realistic workload looks like? And call back to Live Optics. Within Live Optics, it gathers all of the I/O information that you need to fill this out, to match your workload, so you can see, at 100% performance, what kind of performance can my workload, in real life expect to get. Next, and once you actually click the start test, there'll be another pop-up here similar to that of the validation test that we saw earlier. And as it progresses, it will provide a log of sorts here with what it's doing, and if there's any errors or warnings or anything that occurred during the process. And in the background, I wanted to show you what it would look like from vCenter. Depending on the configuration that's chosen, you will see these HCI, FIO, whatever VMs that are actually going to be spun up here for you. In this configuration, there's just 4, so 1 per physical vSAN server. Depending on the configuration, there might be more, might be less. Another neat thing is while the test is running, you can actually access a built-in instance of Grafana that's included with the HCI bench. So that way you can see the performance graphs and metrics for each test in real time. As with Grafana, you can also look at it after the fact. Another way that you can look at it at the the performance results, if it's something you're kicking off and you just want to walk away from and check it later, across at the top that I mentioned on the main HCI bench page is the results tab. So if you click the results tab, it's going to take you to the file structure of the HCI bench VM itself. And if you've ran more than one test, you might see more easy run. If you've ran a custom test, it might be named differently. But what you want to do is click on the folder of that corresponds to your test. And then within that folder, you're going to see quite a few different files here that we'll look at. There's various text files, PDFs. There's also some directories like you see here. All that's great. The majority of the stuff that you'll see in the directories is just the configuration that was selected. So there's not a whole lot of useful information there. The text files, it gives a little bit of information. However, if you were to open the PDF, and we'll look at that here in a second, it actually includes the information that's in the text file in the PDF, and also includes screenshots, all your performance output. It includes graphs that are basically screenshots from Grafana. So I would definitely recommend downloading each of the PDFs that corresponds with the IO workload and saving those, so that we can reference them later as needed. And then the next and last slide, this is just a little landing page here. It'll tell you, what test case, what IO workload this corresponds to. It'll give you the number of VMs, your IOPS, throughput, latencies, 95th read latency, write latency, all kinds of good stuff. But it is a multi-page report, and it gives you all of the graphs and all the necessary information that you could really want.
That's all great stuff, Josh. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I think it gives people a good idea of, okay, hey, what can my system do? So did it? I mean, a lot of times, before you put a system in, you're talking theory. So you're thinking to yourself, okay, yeah, but if I put all these disks in, my IOP should be X, Y, and Z. Should be some number, and you actually do it, and it's good to kind of test that, because once you get a workload in there, if you're not getting the performance, you don't have that kind of benchmark to compare it to. So
absolutely,
all great stuff. And for those looking to download it, we'll include that address that will be on the bottom of the screen here. We'll include that in the notes below the YouTube video, so you can go ahead and download that. We also talked about live optics. For those of you who are not familiar with that, we are going to be doing another video shortly about live optics, but it's a great tool to record, as Josh talked about, your existing workloads and how they're performing. And we'll include a link to that if anyone wants to download that and run it against their system. It's kind of a great way to do like your quarterly report card, I guess, to your boss, saying, "Look, I'm doing a great job. Look how good we're doing with our performance of our network and our systems." So, Josh, thank you very much. I think it's been a great helping people kind of set up that benchmark and going through all the options. And if you like our content, please subscribe and stay tuned for more exciting videos. We talked about the live optics one, so you don't want to miss that one. So thank you guys and have a great day.